The penthouse apartment overlooked the city like a castle in the clouds, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of lights that sparkled like fallen stars. Isabella Martinez had never seen anything so beautiful, so far removed from the small apartment she shared with her younger brother in the old part of town. She stood by the window now, wrapped in a silk robe that cost more than her monthly salary, watching the sun rise over a world that felt foreign and intimidating. Everything in this place spoke of wealth and sophistication. The marble floors, the designer furniture, the artwork that probably belonged in museums. Just 12 hours ago, her life had been completely different. Isabella worked 2 jobs to support herself and her brother Miguel while he finished high school. During the day, she cleaned offices in the business district. In the evenings, she waitressed at a small restaurant near the university. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was honest, and it kept them afloat. Yesterday had started like any other day. She had been cleaning the executive floor of Harrison Industries when she accidentally knocked over a coffee cup, spilling the contents across some important-looking documents on the desk. She had been frantically trying to clean up the mess when the door opened. "What are you doing?" The voice had been deep and authoritative, and Isabella had looked up to find herself staring into the darkest eyes she had ever seen. The man was tall and imposing, wearing a suit that probably cost more than she made in 6 months. His black hair was perfectly styled, and there was something about his presence that commanded attention. "I'm so sorry," she had stammered, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. "I was cleaning, and I accidentally knocked over your coffee. I'll replace the documents. I'll pay for any damage." "You're Isabella Martinez," he had said, and she had been surprised that he knew her name. "Yes, sir. I work for the cleaning company. I promise this won't happen again." He had studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "How old are you, Isabella?" 22, sir." "And you work here every day?" "Yes, sir." "Monday through Friday, early morning shift." Something had shifted in his expression then, though Isabella couldn't have said what. "I'm Daniel Harrison," he had said finally. "This is my company." Isabella's stomach had dropped. She was standing in front of the CEO of Harrison Industries, one of the wealthiest men in the city, and she had just destroyed his paperwork. She was definitely going to lose her job. But instead of firing her, Daniel Harrison had made her an offer she couldn't understand. "I have a proposition for you," he had said. "I need someone to accompany me to a business dinner tonight. Someone who can play the role of my girlfriend convincingly. In exchange, I'll pay you $10,000. Isabella had stared at him in shock. $10,000 was more money than she had ever seen at one time. It would pay Miguel's tuition for the next semester, cover their rent for months, maybe even allow her to cut back to 1 job so she could finish her own education. "I don't understand," she had said. "Why me?" "Because you're beautiful, intelligent, and you need the money. And because I trust you to keep this arrangement confidential." Isabella had wanted to refuse. The whole thing sounded too good to be true, and she had learned to be suspicious of offers that seemed too generous. But the thought of Miguel's future, of the opportunities this money could provide, had made her hesitate. "What exactly would I have to do?" she had asked. "Accompany me to dinner. Make conversation. Convince my business partners that we're in a relationship. Nothing more than that, I promise." And so Isabella had found herself in a world she had never imagined entering. Daniel had taken her shopping first, buying her a dress that cost more than her monthly salary and shoes that felt like they were made of clouds. He had been surprisingly patient as she tried on outfit after outfit, never making her feel rushed or out of place. The dinner had gone better than expected. Daniel's business partners had been charmed by her genuine warmth and curiosity about their work. She had asked thoughtful questions and listened attentively to their answers, and by the end of the evening she could see that Daniel was pleased with her performance. But something had changed during the course of the evening. The way Daniel looked at her had shifted from professional to something warmer, more personal. When he spoke to her, there was a gentleness in his voice that hadn't been there before. And when he placed his hand on the small of her back to guide her through the restaurant, Isabella had felt a flutter of something she hadn't expected. After dinner, Daniel had suggested they go back to his penthouse to discuss her payment. Isabella had agreed, still thinking of this as a business transaction, still focused on the money that would change her and Miguel's lives. But once they were alone in his apartment, the carefully maintained professional distance between them had begun to dissolve. "You were perfect tonight," Daniel had told her, pouring himself a glass of wine and offering her one as well. "Better than I could have hoped." "Thank you," Isabella had replied, accepting the glass with hands that trembled slightly. "Your friends seem very nice. Business partners," Daniel had corrected. "I don't have many friends." There had been something lonely in his voice that had made Isabella study his face more carefully. Despite his wealth and success, Daniel Harrison looked like a man who carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. "That must be difficult," she had said softly. Daniel had looked surprised by her compassion. "Most people assume I have everything I could want." "Money can't buy everything," Isabella had replied, thinking of her own simple but love-filled life with Miguel. They had talked for hours after that, sharing stories about their childhoods, their dreams, their fears. Isabella had learned that Daniel had inherited his father's company at a young age, after both his parents died in a car accident. He had spent the last 10 years building the business, but at the cost of any personal relationships or happiness. "I've never met anyone like you," he had told her as the night grew late. "You see the world so differently than anyone in my usual circle." "Different how?" Isabella had asked. "With hope," Daniel had said simply. "With kindness. Like there's still good to be found in it." The conversation had grown more intimate, more personal. When Daniel had reached out to touch her face, Isabella hadn't pulled away. When he had kissed her, she had kissed him back, surprising herself with the depth of her response. One thing had led to another, and they had found themselves in his bedroom, the city lights casting a soft glow through the windows. Daniel had been gentle and patient, sensing her nervousness even though she had tried to hide it. It wasn't until afterward, as they lay tangled in his expensive sheets, that Daniel had noticed the small stain on the pristine white fabric. Isabella had been dozing, exhausted by the emotional intensity of the evening, when she felt Daniel go very still beside her. She opened her eyes to find him staring at the evidence of what had just occurred between them, his expression unreadable. "Isabella," he said quietly, his voice carefully controlled. "Was this your first time?" The question hung in the air between them like a bridge neither of them knew how to cross. Isabella felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment, suddenly conscious of her inexperience, of how naive she must seem to a man like him. "Yes," she whispered, unable to meet his eyes. Daniel was quiet for so long that Isabella began to worry she had disappointed him somehow. Maybe he was used to sophisticated women who knew exactly what they were doing. Maybe her innocence was something to be ashamed of rather than cherished. Finally, Daniel spoke, and his words were the last thing Isabella had expected to hear. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm so sorry, Isabella." She looked at him in confusion. "Sorry for what?" Daniel sat up, running his hands through his hair in what appeared to be distress. "I should have known, I should have asked. I treated this like a business transaction, and you deserve so much better for your first time." Isabella propped herself up on her elbow, studying his face. "I don't understand. Are you angry with me?" "Angry with you?" Daniel turned to look at her, and Isabella was shocked to see something that looked like pain in his dark eyes. "Isabella, I'm angry with myself. You trusted me with something precious, something you can never get back, and I didn't even realize the gift you were giving me." He reached out to touch her face, his fingers gentle against her skin. "Your first time should have been with someone who loves you. Someone who would make it special and meaningful. Not with a stranger who was paying you to pretend to care about him." Isabella felt tears prick at her eyes, but not for the reason Daniel seemed to think. "Daniel," she said softly, "you didn't take anything from me. I gave it freely." "But the money, the arrangement." "The money was for accompanying you to dinner," Isabella interrupted. "What happened afterward, was my choice. That was because I wanted to be with you." Daniel searched her face as if trying to determine whether she was telling the truth. "But you barely know me." "I know enough," Isabella replied. "I know that you're kind to people who work for you, even when they make mistakes." I know that you listened to my stories about Miguel like they were the most interesting things you ever heard. I know that you were gentle with me even when you didn't know how much it mattered. She paused, gathering her courage for what she wanted to say next. And I know that you, the first person who ever made me feel like I might be worth more than I thought I was. Daniel stared at her for a long moment, then pulled her into his arms, holding her against his chest as if she were something fragile and precious. You are worth everything, he whispered into her hair. You are worth more than all of this. He gestured around the opulent bedroom. You are worth more than any amount of money I could ever give you. They held each other in the growing light of dawn, and Isabella realized that what had started as a business arrangement had become something neither of them had expected, something real and precious and completely unexpected. What happens now? She asked softly. Daniel pulled back to look at her, his expression serious but warm. Now I ask you if you'd like to have breakfast with me. And if you say yes, then I ask if you'd like to have dinner tonight. And if you say yes to that, then I keep asking until you get tired of saying yes. Isabella smiled, feeling a happiness she had never experienced before blooming in her chest. That could take a very long time. I hope so, Daniel replied, leaning down to kiss her forehead. I really hope so. As the sun rose fully over the city, Isabella realized that sometimes the most beautiful things in life come from the most unexpected places. She had walked into Daniel's office as a cleaning lady who had made a mistake. She was leaving as a woman who had discovered her own worth, reflected in the eyes of a man who saw her as precious beyond measure. The money was still important. It would still change her and Miguel's lives in practical ways. But what mattered more was the way Daniel looked at her now, like she was a treasure he had never expected to find. And maybe, Isabella thought as Daniel held her close, that was exactly what she was.